All right, you all, welcome back. We have a distinguished panel for you in a second. I'm going to introduce them in 1 second. Before I do, though, I need to know who's in the house, okay? I need to know who's in the house. So I'm going to get in trouble for this, but, you know, co-chairman's privilege. We're gonna get started. If you went to an SEC school, please make some noise. Okay, all right, okay. Okay, all right, okay. If you went to an ACC school, please make some noise. All right, okay. All right. If you went to an Ivy League or a Northeastern school, make some noise. Okay. Where are my West Coast folks at? Anybody Pac-12? All right. All right, now if you went to an HBCU, please make some noise. Woo! All right. All right, now I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for this one, but I'm gonna go ahead. If you, let's start with the gentleman. Do we have any Iota Phi Thetas in the house? Okay. Phi Beta Sigma.
Blue Phi.
I got you. Where are my ice cold brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha?
Oh, 6.
All right. Where are the noops? And last but not least, where are the brothers of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated? All right. Now I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. Where are my SG Rose? I know you're here. Where are the beautiful ladies of Zeta Phi Beta? Where are the lovely ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha? All right. And last but not least, where are the devastating ladies of Delta Sigma Theta? All right. So y'all, I did that just so we all know we're all connected. We're from all over the country. We're from all over the country, different schools, but we share that bond of being black students and now alumni on some of the most diverse and excellent campuses in the country. So with that, I do want to introduce the next panel. It's entitled Lessons on Black Leadership. Our esteemed moderator is Dr. Mark Anthony Neal, who is the James B. Duke Distinguished Professor of African and African American Studies and the chair of the African American Studies Department here at Duke. Thank you, Professor Neal. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Derrick Heggans. He's the founder and CEO of Global Sports and Entertainment Business Academy, GSB. He's a faculty at Georgetown University, a senior advisor to the Washington Commanders, and is an alum of Duke University and George Washington School of Law, and by the way, my host for Black Student Weekend. So the reason why I'm here bothering y'all with all these emails is Derrick. It's Derrick's fault. So I'm here because of him. Next we have Natalie Lamarck, who is the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of New York Life Insurance Company. She's a double Dookie, Duke University and Duke University School of Law. So welcome, Natalie. And last but not least, Nicole Venable is the principal, the Workforce and Education Practice Group Chair at Invariant. She is a Spelman College alum, as well as Johns Hopkins University, and really just the mayor of DC. So if you ever come through DC, you want to know where the hot spot is, Nicole is your person. So with that, I'll turn it over to Professor Neal.
Thank you, Sanders. How's everybody doing this morning? It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to be in conversation here with my colleagues. So we go back 2 generations, right? What folks were hoping for, were arguing for, were advocating for, were black faces in high places. And, that reached its logical conclusion in 2008 with the election of Barack Obama. All of you are in distinguished leadership roles at various entities. How much of the uniqueness of being a black leader has been part of your motivation for doing the kind of work that you do? And I'll start with you, Nicole.
Oh, me down on the end. Good morning, everyone. Hello, thank you so much for having me. And Sanders, I really appreciate that you invited me to join you all here today. Sanders mentioned that I work at a firm called Invariant, and it doesn't really tell you what it does. But Invariant is the largest female-led federal lobbying firm in the country. We are the most diverse in Washington, D.C. in the top 10. And that's not by accident. And I'll say, you know, I'm a lobbyist. I'm a hired gun. I'm one of those people, sort of Olivia Pope style, going in and companies call me to handle things. And it's not that often that you see many of me. If you sort of rewind 12 years ago, when I first started working off of the Hill, off of the White House, there were literally a handful of other Black female hired guns. There were literally 8. And today, I founded an organization called the Black Girl Magic Network. There are now 300 of us. That is not by chance. And it's because once we were out there, we saw each other, we saw what we were doing, representation matters. We started bringing other people to the fold, to what we call K Street. When someone asks me for a resume, I can tell you what that resume is going to look like. I'm not going to be necessarily recommending the colleague that doesn't look like me. I'm going to recommend the colleague who does. And now we have several heads of offices who are African American, and they hire Black lobbyists, they hire Black consultants. So it was a process over time from the first one and only to the fact now that we have a large number of lobbyists in Washington, D.C. And again, I'm proud to say that of the Black and brown females, there are 300 of us. So it's important not only to represent and to see each other, but to make sure that there are others coming into the field and knowing what it is to be a lobbyist. So I think it meant a lot to see, you know, the first one and onlys, and to have them reach to me and mentor and advocate for me, and now that's what we do.
Thank you. Natalie?
I'll take it a little bit from the perspective of corporate America. I think the topography of the executives in corporate America really changed in the last, I would say, 5 years, and especially in the last 2 to 3 years. We're still sparse in terms of C-suite leaders, which is a problem, especially at the CEO ranks. I will say, though, in the legal space, you're seeing serious representation across general counsels as well as deputy general counsels. I think a lot of that has to do with exactly what Nicole just discussed. There is an amazing group and network of Black female general counsels and Black male general counsels that get together quite often, support one another, both from the perspective of substance, right? You're able to pick up the phone and call someone who looks like you and ask those difficult questions, but also from the perspective of fellowship and sistership, where you have someone that you can call when you're dealing with really difficult questions. And I have to tell you, I took the role of general counsel in March of 2020, and you all know what happened a week later, right? The world shut down. I work for a life insurance company. We were in a global pandemic. So it had effects on the people, it had effects on the business, on the way in which we did our business, but it really impacted our brown and Black employees in a different kind of way. So they were already really dealing with a degree of trauma that their colleagues were not dealing with. And then months later was George Floyd and the ensuing social justice movement. So it was definitely a trial by fire. And without that network of other Black general counsels, chief legal officers to call, we were all in the same situation, right? We were now being pulled into even more rooms than we were pulled into previously. And you were being asked to show up in a really personal way. You were not able to really bifurcate that business space from that personal space. And then actually to do the job properly, you needed to blend the two and bring to bear a degree of openness and vulnerability that, quite frankly, I wasn't, I had to talk to friends and get support to do, because these spaces are white spaces. They are not necessarily friendly spaces. So when you're trying to sit around a table of majority faces and discuss real deep fears you have, like fears you have for your brown children, right, boys, 2 of mine, being killed, or your husband, and having to have that level of personal dialogue 10 minutes into joining a C-suite, it was a lot. But I firmly believe that, and what I've been seeing around the table is a degree of just leadership, vulnerability, and authenticity that feels very different than it felt even 2 years ago.
Derrick.
Thank you, Natalie. Before I talk about uniqueness, I want to talk about how leadership breeds leadership. And there are people in this room that have led not only on this campus, but abroad for many, many years. I'll start with a gentleman, I think he's probably still in the back, Keith Daniel. Keith Daniel, who has been associated with the university for probably 35 plus years, going back to his time as an undergrad. And as I was Sanders' host, Keith actually, as a student athlete and football player, was my host when I first came down here. But Keith has been quietly one of the most impactful people at Duke University over the last 30 years. And some people know his name, but he does not get the credit that he deserves. When Keith finished in undergrad, he went to work in what was then called the Career Development Office, and created opportunities and brought opportunities to undergrads and others when other people that worked in that department were not looking out for those opportunities. He unearthed a couple of key internship opportunities for me, since I was a couple years behind him, that led me to work the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona and beyond, but it really sort of helped to springboard my career. And we've been close for 30 plus years. Then, went to work for Fuqua, and without giving his whole resume, but, a lot of the black people that have come to Fuqua over the last 30 years have Keith Daniel to thank for that. He has been an amazing advocate in making sure that we get in the door and help us to complete and move on beyond that. And then, of course, his work with the Divinity School and otherwise. But, people like Penny, who you guys heard from early this morning, another one of my big brothers, who also played football. And if you have not read A Diary of a Black Man on Wall Street, go get it. It's in the Duke bookstore. So quick shout out. But we're talking about, those who have been true trailblazers and leaders in their space. And so Mayshore and Michael Bennett, again, who was in, the first group of black football players, 7 of them in one class, was a story in and of itself, where the university did not believe that they would succeed, and they have all been stellar in their communities and in their careers, and the impact that all of these people have on others. Their legacy of leadership is what informs our ability to then lead after following them. So it's hard for me to have a conversation around leadership without that. When you speak to uniqueness, for me, in a number of my roles, I have been, either the only or one of the only black folks in mine. So I've worked in the sports entertainment business, as you all have heard, and my first role was actually working on the professional golf tour. And this is, I'm dating myself, but this is before Tiger Woods, okay? So it's a couple years before Tiger Woods. But, I was the only black person that was not a caddy working on the professional tour. And so many people just did not know how to receive me, how to work with me. And for me, in terms of this uniqueness, you mentioned my mission was to teach these very ignorant people, in the most basic sense of the word, who we are and our capacity, and to open the door for others to serve in those roles. And I think if we look at the tour now, there's still work to be done, but they have expanded greatly in terms of diversity. When I was at the National Football League, and I was an attorney at the National Football League with a number of issues that came across our table, as you can imagine. Stepping outside the role of attorney, for those, any football fans here? Any NFL fans in the house? There we go. Okay. So some of you have probably seen these Campbell's Chunky Soup commercials over the years, right? And so a number of years ago, there were these commercials, and one featured Kurt Warner, who was then quarterback for the Rams. This was about 20 years ago, and another commercial featured Donovan McNabb, and they had the mothers featured, and so we were in a sort of preseason sort of planning meetings with Campbell's, and I asked a simple question. I said, now I realized that I'm the only black person here in this room, but I happen to know black people, and black people ask me why Kurt Warner's mom is presented in this, sort of this fashion, as a certain haircut, and how she's dressed, in this particular way, and how she speaks. And Donovan's mother is portrayed in sort of this, Aunt Jemima, Mamie, sort of fat, really loud and sort of stereotypical black woman. And so I wondered if somebody could explain to me how we got this and how did we get here. And the room just went silent, as you can imagine. You could cut the room cut the tension in the room with a knife. And so when there was no explanation, I said, well, let me offer an explanation and a suggestion. Either we decide that we're going to cast these actors appropriately and fairly, keeping cultural things in mind, or we use their actual mothers, right? Let's go one way or the other, right? But let's just be fair. And so from that point on, they decided to use the actual mothers, and that's what you see, in the campaigns until today. If we're not in the room, if we are not able to be part of the conversation, we cannot create change. And so I just give that as an example of, if we can't do that, if we can't lead, we don't have impact. And from that platform that was very sort of controversial in the moment, it gave me additional platform with who was then the COO, now Commissioner Goodell, to help with broader matters with the league office and otherwise.
Yeah, thank you for that, Derrick. Nicole, you mentioned in your comments, you referenced Black Girl Magic. And we hear that now, and no one thinks twice. We know exactly what that means, right? But historically, when we talk of black leadership, we often presume male leadership, right? It's the reason why we know so much more about Martin Luther King Jr. than we do Ella Baker, as just one small example of that. The reason why we know so many more of the young black men and boys that have been killed by police than we know black girls and black women. Talk about, as a black woman, and this is for both you and Natalie, in these positions of leadership, how important, what have been some of the challenges of gender for you in these spaces, and what kind of additional insight do you bring to the table because of your gender?
Well, you asked quite a question there. Coming from Spelman College, which is the birthplace of Black Girl Magic, I can say, we learn about I think when I talk to young people about why it's important to go to Spelman, this is my experience, it's because I say every president there at the school, every leader at the school, everyone is a black female. So when you graduate, you don't think twice about doing any job, right? Because we've seen people doing every job. So that representation really, really matters, seeing it, making you believe it. For me, again, as a lobbyist, when I first came out, there was the old boys network, and it was really the old white boys network. Lobbying was talking to those people and getting insights over a cigar and a whiskey at a steakhouse. It was going to a golf tournament, taking the members off to golf, or supporting campaigns with multi-$1,000 checks. Again, if you're a young black woman coming out of government service, what does any of that have to do with you? And so we had to, as women who were going into lobbying, we had to strike our own path and make our own way. And part of that What we brought to the table was, we said, no, we're going to be in this space. You guys are not going to just get money from the firm to go to golf tournaments. We're going to start spa days and take women, the staffers and the members to spa days. We're going to start with like young people events or events of color. And then we're going to do the crazy thing of trying to get more and more African Americans and especially females elected and in the room and appointed as chiefs of staff. And so this was what we brought to the table because we saw it, we believed in it, and we knew we could do that. And so that it's been a process and it's a mindset, but we came prepared. And I think all of us who either went to HBCUs or are really active in your Black student associations, you know this. And so we came prepared to face sort of the challenges that were there. And they were many, again, I can't explain to you how hard that was. One of the things I talked about, even being a female in lobbying, when I first started out, members of Congress would invite me to dinner. Let me say that again. Members of Congress would invite you to dinner. Now, what do they want when they invite you to dinner? For a man, they wouldn't think twice about what they want. Oh, I'm gonna go to dinner with this member of Congress, and I'm gonna talk about this bill and this information. But when a member of Congress asks me to dinner, it's quite a different thing, and I have to come in a different way. And so we were, to your point about how do you navigate this, we would call each other, did you get invited out by this member? Is it one that's got like octopus hands? Are they serious? Like, who is this? Do you guys, where should we go? Can you guys be at the bar in case something happens? All of this had to happen and was around, and you had this village put around in order for me to actually do what all of the male colleagues were doing without thinking twice. So this is sort of how we use our network. This is how we see ourselves. And by the way, I didn't shy away from going to those dinners, but I did put in place all of those guardrails around why we were going to dinner.
That's, oh, yeah, you brought me back.
I know.
For me, I have been incredibly blessed. So I'm going to talk about a woman named, and I bet you know her, Ann Claire Williams, who is a retired judge on the Seventh Circuit. And she was the first and only Black judge on the Seventh Circuit and also federal judge in Chicago. And she was one of these humans, who taught me how to mentor, taught me how to sponsor. I watched her be the top jurist. To get on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals is no feat, that's a feat. I watched her own her presence, right? Sitting next to Judge Posner, who is an imposing individual, and just hold her own. I got to sit there as her law clerk walking into a courtroom, and we had all female law clerks, and most of us are brown except for one who's an honorary, right? And we're sitting there, and I'm not kidding, there are no women, there are no people of color. Now, when you walk in with a Black judge with Black law clerks, it was a scene. Every time we sat down for oral argument, people were like, whoosh, like the whole courtroom's head would shift. So I watched someone who was kind, who was compassionate, who was brilliant, who incorporated being a jurist with being a mother, who understood what it meant to bring up with her. She was never walking into a room alone. Never. Right? She always had a Black or a brown face behind her, and excellence came with her. And so what you learn is a muscle, right? You understand what it takes. I saw her blend personal and professional with such incredible ease that when I sort of stepped into those similar spaces and similar roles, I understood what the sacrifice would be, but I also understood what I needed to propel and support myself and how I could propel and support other people. It is a learned skill. So, what I would just implore everyone in this room to do is think about who those people have been in your life. Have you maintained connections with them? And who do you serve as that person for? And how are you serving as that person for them? Of course it's about hiring them. It's about making sure they get the job, making sure you get them a seat at the table, especially for brown women in those situations, because there are just so many more assumptions, right? And they are different when it comes with being a woman of color than being a man of color, especially in corporate structures. So if you understand what your paradigm is and what you're dealing with, are you having those open, vulnerable conversations with people who need to understand your perspective, right? Are you serving as that phone call for someone like, what is that going to be like? Who is that? And if you're not, take a step back and ask yourself if you can be. And also just think about who has served in that role for you. Because the point you made about being in the room, it comes with a degree of responsibility and privilege, but the responsibility is not yours to speak on behalf of a group. It just isn't. And so to balance both being present, but not trying to create some homogeneous, visage of what it is that folks in here would want is a challenge. Because the people in the room want you to do that. They want you to sort of give them the answer, and there isn't an answer. There are many answers, there are many perspectives. Have we done the proper homework? There are proper questions to ask. And I think as Black women, we do take a step back, and I've seen it at least in the boardroom. I've seen the way we weave together, right? The intellectual with the personal, the family, and quite frankly, anyone who's in corporate America, a for-profit institution, you're selling something. And you're selling something to people who probably have perspectives similar to yours. So these are substantive and important. It's not soft skills. This is a business imperative to get it right, especially today. So what I think we all try to do is lean into that. Don't apologize for it, right? You don't apologize for asserting or identifying the lack of representation of X, Y, or Z. And the voice is different. It's, I have your back by identifying this issue. Because if I, in this role, in this capacity, let the organization move forward without understanding this, that's a vulnerability for the organization. So it is it's more empowering, right? The tone has shifted, and as a mom and a wife, I bring that. I bring that every single day. And I've learned from Judge Williams how to not be apologetic about raising those issues and raising them from the perspective of power and not from a perspective of difference.
Thank you, Natalie. This is a panel on leadership, and here at Duke, Duke's largest school, the Trinity School of Arts and Sciences, has been led for the last 7 years by a Black woman, Valerie Ashby, a chemist who's leaving Duke in a month or two to become the new president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Valerie Ashby is one of 2 Black women deans here at Duke. The other one is Paula McLean, who's retiring from the position in June. And I often wondered, watching them do what they do here on campus as the only 2 Black women, where they found community because they were each other's peers. And one of the things about leadership is that, you find community in your peers, but if you are a person of color, if you're Black and a woman, your peer group becomes smaller and smaller the more accomplished you become. So what kind of strategies have you all used, and I'll start with you, Derrick, to be able to find a peer group across race, across ethnicity, across gender, that's been impactful in terms of you developing a leadership style when you aren't going to find peers necessarily that look like you?
That's a great question, Mark. I'll start with this. I've been in the business of creating leaders, right? So not just serving in leadership capacity myself, but really focused on creating leaders, and that's sort of what my day job, my company is focused on. But Sanders mentioned that I've done work with the Washington Commanders. I'm going to slightly correct that. As I served as the advisor to the president of the Washington Commanders, and I say that for a reason. And those that know me know that I have very publicly expressed my challenges with the ownership of the Washington Commanders. But that being said, when Jason Wright, who is the first Black president in the National Football League, reached out to me for help when he first started the role, in our first conversation with him, I said to him, "You are the first, but you will not be the last." and I spent 25 years of my career hoping that we would get someone like you in this position. So now that we're here, I am focused on making sure that you are as successful, wildly successful, as possible. I'm going to do that, A, for you, but B, part of the larger mission is, now that we have you, I need to create 10 to 20 more of you. So that is the deal. And he accepted it, and we've been working to create additional leadership beyond that too. So hopefully that speaks in some way, Mark, to the question as to how do we find these peer groups and how do we create these peer groups. In this particular situation, it was helping Jason so that we get more and more and more. And immediately what we saw, and the case study is still being built, is the second came not too long ago. So Sashi Brown just started last month as the president of the Baltimore Ravens. And so our work will continue. It doesn't ease up just because we got a second one in 2022. I will push for the next 5, 10, hopefully 32 team presidents in the NFL and beyond, right? And so, I work with the NBA, with Mark Tatum and others, and we're looking to do the same thing in the NBA and beyond. So, yes, in my early years, and certainly as I served as counsel at the NFL, and tried to recruit and create more opportunities for us. Not just in professional sports, but otherwise, I tried to create and leverage a peer group. But I've been more focused on creating more opportunities for leaders.
Natalie?
I talked a little bit about some of the peer groups, specific to the legal space. But I would say that the challenge I have found is, while some of our needs, right, can be addressed because we need fellowship, we need community, we also have to be really thoughtful about branching out and joining majority groups and being present in those spaces and bringing with us someone that we are supporting or mentoring. If you're attending or like really creating space for us in those majority worlds and not bringing someone to watch what you're doing, that's how you empower and create that bridge. That's what was done for me. So I had these phenomenal mentors who brought me into the room. And I have to tell you that the demystification of what it takes to be in the room, I see all the heads nodding. It ain't rocket science. They try to act like it is, but it's just not. And it really is just access. It's access and it's opportunity. So that has been so incredibly empowering for me to see, because you walk in and you're like in a boardroom, right? In a Fortune 100, and everyone's like, oh my God, God's boardroom. It's human beings sitting around a table talking about stuff. It is not that deep, right? You are all brilliant people, intelligent individuals from phenomenal schools, and can hold your own in that room. Once you understand, right, what does X do? What does it mean to be the chair of the audit committee? What does it mean to be on the board of directors? What does that look like? What do they talk about? Once you have seen it and the curtain comes down, it's like the people turn the lights on, you're like, oh my God, right? And so I think when I think about supporting, I don't, to me, like, leadership is such a ponderous, it's like such a ponderous statement, like to be a leader, it's a heavy statement. I think about giving people the understanding that they need to make the decision as to whether they want to be in that space or not, and giving them that choice.
Exposure is everything. I mean, we think about exposing our children through various organizations, but this is the point, right? Exposure. We've talked about representation, we've talked about sponsorship and advocacy, we've talked about exposure. And I want to circle back to this concept of mentorship and creating peer groups. Because when you typically think about mentorship, you think, oh, I'm gonna go have coffee with this person and check in with this one. And it's usually someone that you're mentoring or otherwise. And I wanna talk about an expanded view of mentorship, because mentorship should be you reaching back and exposing younger other people It should be peer-to-peer mentoring too, because there's a lot that we can learn from each other. What are you doing right? What is the best practice that you have? Let me share with you. And that phone call, when you really don't know who to call or know what to do next, that's where that is really important. And then there is the reaching up. For me, I look to people like a Gina Adams, and if, again, you don't know this name, she is the highest ranking African-American female at FedEx, globally. And if you think about what FedEx is handling, Gina is all over that. And you want to put yourself next to those people and see how they move so that you can move that way, so that you can bring other people that way, and that you can create space for other people. So think about, as a leader, mentoring from that 360-degree view, and that's what we do as well. Because you have to understand, you can learn from the young people. I just hired 2 young ladies who are fresh out of HBCUs, and they're still teaching me. I mean, they teach me things every day. It's very interesting. I was trying to figure out how to take our Black Caucus at my firm, and I said, we're going to have like a Black Caucus meeting, and what should we call it? And I said, maybe we should call it Vibe, and they said, no, I don't like that name. And then I said, well, what's wrong with calling it a, Persons of Color Caucus, or the Colors Caucus, or the Caucus of Color? No, we don't like any of that either. And they told me why, and I was like, okay, those are good reasons, but in our day, something like that would be, make much sense to us. They wanted, and just a phrase off of this, to call it the Collective Caucus. They said, because we're all here to help each other. And this is from 2 young ladies who just graduated from college, who are working with me. So I'm learning things. And that's what we want, to make us all better as leaders. So mentor in that 360-degree way, as opposed to just, I'm going to sit here and tell you what you need to do to get where I am, or just check in with you. Because again, all of these different people are part of your journey and your leadership development, and how you expose other people in the right way for their success.
You have something to add there?
So I talk to people about the concept of leadership all the time, and many times I hear from people say, I'm not a natural leader. I don't have the time to be a leader. I'm not, I haven't been trained to be a leader. To which I respond, leadership comes in so many different forms. It takes so many different forms, and when I think about sort of the way that leadership, is formed within me, I think about, what am I passionate about, and what, if there's something I'm passionate about, how can I positively affect that thing, that area, in some small way, maybe in some large way. A few of my passion points have been not only Duke, right, but Black folks at Duke. How do we improve the lots of not only the current student body, but Black alumni at the university? We talked about my work in sports, but let's talk just really quickly about Duke and part of sort of how we got here. We have not had Black students at this university for a very long time, but we've made a lot of progress in this short period of time, and it's in part due to a lot of the people that have worked very, very hard to carry our tradition forward. And I want to point out a few people, I think a couple that are maybe in the audience today. Melvia Wallace, who led Melvia, please shout her out, right? Who held down our Black alumni organization for so long, when there was no support. She held it together. She kept us together. And maybe about 15 years or so ago, time flies, so I can't recall, some of us, quote unquote, young whippersnappers, started to make some noise, and wanted to really bring her some support. And we had some, Bennett, what would you say, some kind arguments with the university. And we really were trying to get the university at the time to understand the power of this community, and they could not see it. But we worked really hard to get that done, and we got to understand the value proposition, and to share with them that if they engaged with us in a certain way, then we would be able to get them what they were looking for. And I remember a particular occasion where former President Broadhead was coming to D.C. for an event. And we've been having these conversations. And for a Duke event at the Capitol Hilton, where there were about 1,000 Duke alums, I walked around the room with some Duke alumni people who I will not name, and we counted the black people. We literally walked around and counted the black people. Now, we don't know the final number. I say it was 15. She says it was 20. But the point is the point. And within 2 weeks, when we were actually hosting this sort of new Black alumni summit with phone calls by a select group of people, Winston Henderson, who's unable to be here today, myself, Bennett, and Melvia, and others, on a rainy Saturday morning where people had to pry themselves away from home, from their kids, from Saturday morning activities. We had 150 black people at WilmerHale, hosted by Tanya Robinson and Justin Fairfax. And they saw that, if they engaged with us and we picked up the phone to make it happen, you could see what could happen. And so it was a spark, and we did a number of these around the country just to get them to understand and to buy in. That sort of led to us doing the 50th anniversary celebration here soon thereafter. I forget what year that was. 2000, yes. And I say that in that, I'll say sort of my role in that was as a bit of a spark plug, right? I wasn't Melvia. I wasn't carrying the torch for all those years. My effort at leadership was to help to see a different model and a different way for the university to engage with us and to bring our alumni back in a substantial way to engage with the university. But then it took someone like a Sanders to do. Sanders, where are you? I can't see you. Stand up, shout out, man. So that really just set the stage for Sanders and his leadership to create what we have today, right? Like, what we have today is because of this dude. Like, it's not me or Winston, it's this guy, right? Who has carried the torch and made it happen and brought in other teams and identified, right, people like Allison to partner with so we could be here today. It doesn't happen without, his leadership. So leadership comes in so many forms, and what we can each give based upon, what our skills and strengths are and the time that we have. But there are ways that we can be incredibly impactful in doing that.
Thank you, Derrick. Everyone in this room at some point has been an undergraduate student at some institution. What lessons did you learn as undergraduates that you go back to now in your role as a leader and still find value in the insights that you got as an undergraduate? And I'll start with you, Natalie.
You said with me?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm staring at my line sisters, and I'm trying to think of what I'm allowed to say. We actually had this conversation last night when we all arrived, but I know this is going to sound crazy. My undergraduate experience at Duke, I went to a black school. That was my experience. I sat on the black bench.
Amen. Amen.
Right? I pledged. I spent a whole lot of time at NCCU. I spent a whole lot of time at T. I spent, so what I learned and just made some lifelong sisters, I'm not going to call them friends. What I learned was you can create the reality you want in any structure.
Yeah. Nicole?
For me, when I my freshman year at Spelman was the first year that Dr. Janetta B. Cole was president of Spelman. So we call her our sister president because she started the year that we were all freshmen. And one of the things that we do when we're freshmen is they pull us into Sisters Chapel, and we have this convocation, and she was speaking to us, and she said, and many of you have heard this along the way, but she said, you know, I am giving you all the lifelong sort of mission to lift as you climb. And I'm sure some of you have heard that and seen the poster that you can find around Black college campuses. For me, that's been my North Star. And every single place that I have worked in Washington, I've always brought other people, other Black people, to the table. It didn't matter if I was working for Senator Robb. I brought William Clyburn to come sit next to me. You know, when I went to work in the White House for President Clinton, I brought other Black people with me there. Every single place that I went, I never took on this idea that, well, I'm here, that's enough. No, there's never enough of us. There's like 15 of them, so there should be 15 of us. Like, so lift as you climb has been my North Star, and that's what I've done at every point in my career and what I'm going to continue to do.
I'll say a few different things, and I'll try to keep it short, but one, approximately 33 years ago, while I was pledging, I was in this auditorium, actually, and I had a class with, some of you took it, with Paul Jeffries. It was Intro to Jazz.
Yes.
Intro to Jazz, right? And we had like 300 people in this class, and it was historically wasn't the most rigorous, we'll just say, right? Is that fair to say? Is that fair to say? You know, half my teammates from the football team were in there. The whole basketball team was in there, right?
The whole team, right? The whole team.
And Paul J, cool Paul J, would just get up there and he would talk for an hour and a half, and he never really engaged much with the audience, right? But he just got there and told his stories of Coltrane and all these other guys, right? Bird and everything. It was great, right? But after a particular long night studying in a pledge session, I was a little tired the next morning, right? And so I admittedly fell asleep in the class. And the only time in the whole semester this man ever called out anybody in the audience, he points to me, right? To ask me if I heard what he said. And of course I didn't. And of course that evening my pledge session got a little bit longer. So I never forget that, but the point is, you never know who's watching. You never know who's watching and when. And that lesson was carried forward. I mentioned working on the golf tour. It's interesting. So when I interned on the golf tour, summer of '92 before I went to the Olympics, and I mentioned working on the tour and it being my first job. Well, in September, I started working on the tour. Well, I was called up for an interview by someone who I'd never, in my mind, met before, and went out to Detroit. And when I went out for the interview, I said, "Why am I here? I don't believe we've actually met." And he said, I don't believe we've actually met. He said, "But I watched you. I watched you for 2 months. And I knew from talking to people and watching you that you were the person that I needed for this role." So I learned that you never know when someone's watching, and to always be yourself, and hopefully you're being your best self. And that can lead to amazing things, and can also kill opportunities for you. Second thing I learned was community. And I have a number of sort of communities here and beyond, sub-communities at Duke. My Duke football alumni group who I engage with, regularly in our crazy text and email exchanges, on nonsense and business and otherwise, but community being important. And the third thing is excellence. That is one thing that I got here from this university, a broad excellence, but in particular, as we say here today, our Black excellence. And I think that we are starting, and I say starting, this is the tip of the iceberg, to see our Black talent shine globally. Mm-hmm.
One last question for the three of you before we open it up to the audience. If there is one jewel that you have gathered from your leadership positions that you would want to share with the audience, what would those be? And we'll start with you, Nicole.
I'll start, and I'll sort of pick up where Derrick left off. One of the things in Washington, it's all about sort of people watching how you move. And I always talk to young people about what I call the Reco Echo, which is what is the recommendation that you get when you're not in the room? And so the gym, I would say, for all of us who are leaders is also to keep that in mind. Don't burn bridges. The golden rule, be nice, speak to other people the way you want to be spoken to. And with that, you can sort of bring up issues, you can be in any space, you can challenge people as much as possible because they know where you're coming from, they know you're bringing your authentic self, and they know that you're being respectful to them, and to your point, you're trying to do something to improve the organization or to better or add to the bottom line because they know they've seen you. They've seen the good that you've brought, they've seen the success that you've brought with you, and there are a whole bunch of other people around you talking about those things that you're doing. That Reco Echo is very important, and so that's my jewel.
Natalie?
I've been thinking about this, sir. I would say take risks. That's what I would say I've learned, and we don't do that enough. I think the people in this room, we don't do that sufficiently, and double that for the women in this room. We hold ourselves to an internal standard that is usually impossible to meet because of that Black excellence sort of voice we constantly have in the back of our minds. And what I will say is our counterparts do not hold themselves to those standards. They do not necessarily shirk roles and responsibilities so easily based on their perceived inadequacies. They take the risk. And I would say that I would hope, right, the next time anyone in the room is presented with an opportunity that is, quote unquote, a stretch assignment, you will think about the support units you have, you will think about, right, the excellence that you can leverage. And I would hope that you say yes, as opposed to saying, well, maybe, if I, when I, just say yes.
As we close up, I'll say just a couple things. One is create opportunities and bring people along the way. When I mentioned my work with Jason Wright with the Washington football team, part of our work, part of the mission I mentioned in terms of creating more NFL team presence was also creating a diverse leadership team and also working with those folks from the outside that look like us. And so we created the most diverse senior leadership team in the National Football League, and hopefully that'll be a blueprint for others in the NFL, NBA, and otherwise. We also, with some of the biggest projects that the team had, engaged minority or Black firms to help us. We worked with a group called Evans and Chambers, as a matter of fact, that Michael Bennett here is one of the principals of. But it was important to, we brought in Derrick Mayshore, who we've mentioned before, who's an alum who works in real estate. But being inclusive and bringing others in when you have the opportunity to do that to accomplish your biggest missions. And then also say, and you know, when you create, to follow through. I had a conversation a number of years ago with Jim Shelton. Some people know Jim from his days when he was Secretary of Education under the Obama administration. And Jim and I and Arnie Duncan, who was Secretary before Jim was, asked me if I could help them with high school matriculation rates and dropout using my background in sports and entertainment. And I said, yeah, we can create a whole plan that would use the infrastructure of sports and entertainment to help us to push this forward. And then they said, okay, let's do it. I didn't think that they would be eager to dive in and do the work, but that's part of what led us to launch My Brother's Keeper. And you guys probably saw the commercial with Steph Curry and Michelle Obama, right? That was only part of the lift. But it was then digging in and actually doing the work and creating the impact. And I'm proud that we were able to do that. So it's creating, following up. It is being inclusive and bringing others to the table and ultimately having long-lasting impact.
Thank you, Derrick. We're going to open it up to the audience now. There are 2 microphones right at the front of these 2 aisles. And do state your name and where you're coming from.
Oh, yeah. I got you. Name's Michael Theodore, Florida State University, future scholar in African American Studies, Sociology, and Prison Reform. My question to you is this: what is your definition of mentorship? And at what point in your lives did you come to fully understand and appreciate this definition? And what did that understanding and appreciation do for your success? Thank you.
Is that for all of us or one of us? Or?
All of y'all.
Ladies first, Nicole?
Yeah. Well, again, I'll go back to this idea about sort of 360-degree view of mentorship. I think it's important to have them, juniors, peer, and sort of looking towards sort of aspirationally. But one thing I didn't mention before, and Natalie did mention this, it's mentorship and allyship. And you don't know where your mentorship is going to come from. Because in my career, I had a number of, actually, my white Republican colleagues who were very, I made them allies, and then they were very good mentors. A lot of the jobs that I had, it's because they put me in that space. So I will say, don't forget about mentors that don't look like us. And that's the piece that I'll end on, because that changed my view about things too. It's not that I'm not, ever going to bring a white person to the table or to my office or hire one of them. But, again, for me, in terms of mentorship, what I needed and what I encourage you all to do is to look beyond just people who look like us. Because if you are the first one or only, you may not be able to find a mentorship that's aspirational that looks like you. And you have to find that advocate, that Sherpa who's going to sponsor you and tell you how to get into those spaces too. And they, like I said, they will come from the most unlikely spaces. Again, white Republican male, but he put my name up for one of the biggest lobbying roles that I ever had. So, it's because I spent time with him and he got to see how I act and how I move. And that was very helpful. So that's my tidbit.
It's a deep question. I think I'm trying to start at the end where you said, and how does it actually affect everything you do? I've been mulling that piece. And what I would say, and this has been my experience, especially in these settings, it creates an incredible humility. Because when you sort of step back and you understand the number of human beings that poured into you, if that doesn't create an impetus for you to pour into the same number of human beings, then I'm not sure, kind of like the Madeleine Albright line, I'm not sure what to do with you. Because, it ties also into that access and opportunity point, because there is this fiction that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's a fiction. It's not real. None of them had, right? And everyone who has achieved anything has done it because of mentorship and sponsorship, period, end of discussion. So when you really strip away that fiction and you understand the power of support, it does create humility, because whatever you've achieved, you cannot look at as your own. You just can't. And it creates obligation and responsibility. Because that was a powerful question, brother. It was a powerful question.
I agree. I think it's a great question, and one that I'll admit that I still struggle with at some point today. When I was younger, much sort of coming out of undergrad, I thought about that question a lot. And the question was, will I be more impactful by trying to affect many or affect few in a deeper way, right? And maybe those few could sort of rise up and have greater impact. And what was the best way for me to do that? And so I think I've employed a combination of it, quite frankly. But to the base of your question, I think where it starts for me is I ask myself a question, and that is, how can I help people? I just ask myself that question, how can I help someone? And so when I engage with people, I always have, not in the back, but in the forefront of my mind, how can I help this person? And so if it's an introduction to someone, then I'll do that. If it's a knowledge base that they need access to, then I'll give them the connection to that. But I think for me, it starts with that question, how can I best be helpful to this individual?
Good afternoon. Thank you for your conversation. I'm sorry.
Ladies first, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Stroy. I am from Rutgers University, Newark. I am the director for the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center in Newark, and had the pleasure of working with the colleagues here at Duke. My question is, recently we are now getting demand questions to go into corporate settings to have these conversations about them being aware and understanding what is going on. And so this is really questioning something you said, Natalie, about taking on this role and having to be vulnerable in a new role in this majority space. And anybody else can answer too. What would you recommend as I go into these spaces as a consultant to help them understand what their history, what they need to do, and be welcoming to the people of color that work with them? And so, giving an example, doing some work currently with Panasonic, and the people of color feel apprehensive, but they know they need to have these conversations. So what would be some of your best advice for I can help everyone become inclusive?
Look, I think, you hear this phrase a lot, but it's quite important, tone at the top. You have got to get the senior leaders out there talking about those issues first so that they can create cover for the more junior people. Because it's inappropriate in those kind of corporate structures to have these junior folks putting themselves out on the line when the senior leaders haven't done that first. Right. So I would say you start with the leadership. I would say you start with homework assignments for the leadership. Our recently retired CEO gave everybody for Christmas last year CAST, and then had conversations about CAST as the EMC or the C-suite team. So I think until you have coalesced around a real baseline around the senior leadership about where does the organization want to lean in, where will it create safe spaces, and then follow up with structural change, meaning, I know this is a bit of like corporate we're getting too deep in the weeds, so I'm sorry, but are there employee resource groups? Do they have safe spaces where they can colloquy without necessarily having the prying eyes of the entire organization? But I would say the one thing you cannot do is ask, and this is happening around corporate America, and it's wrong, ask very junior individuals in organizations to step out on a ledge, essentially, when the senior leaders haven't done enough soul searching and haven't done it vocally. They can't just do it in the boardroom, they can't just do it in their office. It has to be done in a public manner.
Thank you, and that was kind of what I said to, some
Well, you gave good advice.
Yeah, because they want to put a statement, I was like, so what's the meat to this statement?
That's right.
If you're putting some legs and some truth to it, otherwise
Look, we
performative.
we didn't talk about this at all, but right now, and I think about this a lot, we're all studying ESG, right? Environmental, social governance, and it touches everything. there isn't really an aspect of our culture, both globally as well, right? Not just domestically. And if you're trying to set any sort of paradigm, the S, right, which is essentially what you're talking about, the social, you can, again, articulate it from the perspective of the value proposition you're creating for this organization, because they are, well, we don't have to get into specifics, but global organizations have responsibilities. They have to be auditable. Things, you have to actually be prepared to be asked very hard questions once you put out those statements. So if you help them do the homework so that they're prepared for the back-end questions that will most certainly come once they make the public statements, including how involved is your senior leadership team in this conversation, you'll put them in a much better position to do it right, and you'll also be protective of the more junior people in the organization that are having that hard time.
Thank you.
And let me just add one other thing. It's actually now not enough to just involve the senior leaders. It has to matter to them, and the only way that it matters is to make it a part of how they're judged and they are rewarded in their company. We've seen for a long time that companies have had, DEI as a goal, and it didn't actually, for many, many years, create or result in the optimal sort of environment. So unless those senior leaders are going to be held accountable monetarily, their job on the line for it, then you're going to have a much tougher time getting them to really focus beyond performative acts. So make it a part of how their boards are looking at them, part of what gets them to their bonus and those kinds of things.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you.
I want to thank my sister for going first, because that allowed me to shift my question, and I appreciate you. Nathaniel Rutledge, Auburn University, Auburn Black Alumni Council. I heard several things. Ms. Nicole, I heard ma'am talking about mentorship, perfect and on point. Talking about risk, Ms. Natalie, and just helping someone, Mr. Derrick. My question goes, as we stand as leaders, there's not always a person that is looking forward to pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. Sometimes they don't have boots, but in this world today, we look at them, they do have boots, but they're slip-ons. So they can just grab them and pull them on. So my question would allude and go to the point of our responsibility as leaders. How do you think you have a responsibility to reach out to that person who has become so marginalized or so accepting in the way that things are that they don't want to change? They don't want to be seen. They don't want to grow. They don't want to be a part of something that will help everyone to make more of a global statement by growing. Do we have a responsibility to reach and try to pull that person who perhaps don't even realize they need help to be pulled up?
I'm happy to jump on that first. I think that, first of all, thank you very much for the question. I think it's a great question. It's a very important question. I think it's a very personal question. I think it's a very personal question. And when we talk about leadership and mentorship, and so I think that at least I shared my framework about what you're passionate about, what you may be able to use in terms of your skill set and background and time. We are all challenged by time, right? And we all have, our work responsibilities and our families, and some have kids and grandkids, and we're all sort of fighting, time to do what it is that we feel that we have to do and what it is that we want to do. So I'll sort of give that as a backdrop for my answer. I'll say I do what I can, right? And I don't apologize for what I can't do. But an example of what I feel I can do. So I run education programs teaching young people about the business of sport. I will do one this summer here at Duke University. We will be at Blue Devil Tower. And there will be scholarships offered to kids of color in this area who cannot afford what would be the market tuition. right? So for me, that is a way that, that I reach back, that I give back, and I stay with that same mission that I talked about earlier in working with Jason. How do I create leadership in the next generation? And it's not based on how many dollars and cents you have in your pocket today. You can come from having very little, and we will have kids from all the public schools here in the area participate in this program that I hope that 5, 6 years from now, I could say from them being in this program, they're working here at Duke University in athletics. They're working for the Charlotte Panthers. They're working for the Charlotte Hornets. I almost slipped and said Bobcats, Lisa. Or the league office. So the breadth and sort of how I try and choose to spend my time is a teaching effort, number one. But even reaching outside of that, it's not just, hey, let me connect you and give you this opportunity. But it is teaching people, it is sort of going back to the old Arthur Ashe about, teaching someone how to fish, right? And so people call me often because, they say, oh, you're connected, you can get me to X, Y, and Z. And I'll say, before, there were the computers that we have today, when I was an undergrad and didn't have a personal computer, I would go to that library in Perkins, and I would send out hundreds of resumes trying to get opportunities. So I often start conversations with undergrads like that. How many resumes you sent out? So are you really working? Let's talk through that process, right, and teach them how to fish to create their opportunities.
That really is I'm sorry.
No, you go.
It is a very personal question, and I think I would try to get at the reason why they don't necessarily want to. Because I think oftentimes it's from a lack of confidence, a lack of understanding, or a lack of exposure. So before trying to decide what to do, I would want to understand a little bit more about their why. And I think generally speaking, what I've found at least is a little bit of time and understanding where that is coming from, and often that motivation will come from them. Because I don't believe motivation can come from outside. I think it has to come from you.
I'd like to tell a really quick story. My real personal mentor was my mother, who was an educator. She went to Winston-Salem State University. She sat on their board of trustees for a while, and she was an entrepreneur. We are from the Hampton Roads area of Virginia, and there's a small college there named Christopher Newport University that has been run by a former Senator Paul Tribble. His wife was a friend of my mother's, and she was a Christian coalitioner. If many of you are, she was very, very conservative Christian woman. She approached my mother one day and said, listen, I've got these girls that I am talking to once a month. And my mother said, well, why are you telling me? She's thinking in her head, why are you telling me this? Come to find out, this woman took it upon herself to find some young women from the community, all of them Black, all of them young, and she was going to mentor them. And my mother said, I'll be right there. She just invited herself to go to every one of those sessions because she didn't want them to not have a balanced view, or she wanted to know what this woman was going to tell them and whether or not she could meet them where they were. And so my mother would go to these things, and it was a Bible study. My mom didn't go to church. I was like, Mom, you going to Bible study? She explained to me what it was, and she started telling them about her daughter, Nikki. And one day she was like, Nikki, you've got to come down here. These girls want to meet you. So I came down. We were all going to the pool one day, and the first thing that these young women said was, you don't have kids? They couldn't understand that I had, I'm a young working woman and didn't have kids. So I just say that to say it is a personal decision to do, but that's my example. And so if I see that, I'm gonna jump right in just like my mother did, because at the end we understand that representation matters. For them to just see someone who kind of looked like them, who didn't have kids, was revolutionary to them. And I never would have thought about something like that or even getting involved in that, but and my mother certainly didn't see herself going to Bible study, I can tell you that. But she did that for many, many, many years because she felt, again, there needed to be her presence. So I think for a lot of you, you have to decide for yourselves, is your presence needed? Do you need to represent? Do you need to make sure that community that you're reaching out to, that they are being met where they are? And with people who look like them and have empathy and really have their best interests at heart.
Thank you.
Were you next? Did you want?
Thank you, Sanders.
Go ahead. Okay. Good afternoon. Ooh, steps. I am Kenita Stringer-Stanback. I'm a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill on enemy territory here today.
Welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes.
Maybe we want to talk to that brother right there.
I ain't mad at y'all either, especially since we got to retire Coach K a little early.
Ouch. You got to give her props for getting it in. You got to give her props for getting it in.
I mean, we wouldn't be on Tobacco Road if we didn't have a little volatility now.
It's still fresh.
I know it is. Hey. So my ancestors were the black founders at UNC, meaning they were enslaved, coerced laborers. And one of the things that I'm noticing on this panel is that I don't see people who look like me, like queer, gender variant folks. And I work in an extremely homogenous field. I'm a sociology librarian. And I just want to know, like, where are we? And why is it that we're not present? And who, how? Like, the echo chamber you're talking about? Sometimes our mere presence is disruptive. And when we're in these homogenous environments, we don't have good echoes. So I just, want to know what y'all doing about that and what you would suggest for people who've been in fields that are extremely homogenous, who are trying to find that way, sending out those hundreds of resumes that it's just dead silence. What then? Like, that's my question.
Thank you.
Well, I'll start. I mean, I'm in the sort of political sphere, so I can tell you, in our group, in Black Girl Magic, there are a number of people that look like you in our space and in our group, and we welcome them. And one of the things, again, about you being in the room and being able to have conversations. After George Floyd, one of the things that I did at my firm was to start a conversation called a Dialogue for Change. And we started having these very tough conversations that were guided. And I pushed really hard in the beginning to have someone that was transgendered, because that's where a lot of the conversation in politics was. So I had a friend of mine who we worked in the Clinton administration together, and I knew him back then, and I know her now. And she came and gave a very, very interesting talk about this and what it's like for her in the workplace and how she is seen in politics and how it feels in politics. So, I think it is about getting people to understand and bringing them to the table, the networks that you have. But I like I said, I can say especially the Black and queer organizations and the representation in Washington, D.C. is actually quite strong. There are not as many females who are in that space. There are a lot more Black men who are presenting, like David Johns, and who is heading up, there's a national organization that he heads up in Washington, D.C. to push for politics, more representation in politics. And as you know, we have a number now of Black men who are gay who are members of Congress now, and they're making a change. There's a whole equality caucus on Capitol Hill, and they work very closely with the Tri-Caucus, which are the Asians, the Hispanics, the African Americans, and the Equality Caucus. And we consider ourselves to be allies. So when we have events during Congressional Black Caucus Week, we invite all of the leadership from all of those caucuses to it as well. So we're just trying to be more allies and get people to really expand what they view as diversity, at least from the staffer point of politics. There's a whole political dynamic that's going on right now, which is set and apart from that, but that's where we are trying to bring people to the table.
Look, I think it's an absolutely important point to make in terms of, for this group of leaders to understand that those issues of intersectionality. And, if you're focusing right now on civil rights issues, what's going on in the LGBTQ plus community from a legislative perspective is abhorrent. And as individuals, all of whom have benefited from other individuals, right, standing up and advocating for rights for us, because we had majority people supporting us, I think that it's absolutely an important conversation for this group to be engaged on, because quite frankly, what's occurring right now is really, I believe, an embarrassment to what this country stands for. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. And if people in the room are not privy, you really should be looking at all of the legislation that has been proposed across the country in this space. It harkens back to times that, pre-civil rights times. It is really abhorrent.
And I just want to say, it's a midterm election year. If you like all these things going on in all these states, just prepare yourself for what's going to happen if the House and/or Senate flips to the Republicans in the fall. They're going to take all of that legislation from all of those states, and they're going to be presenting it to the American public at the federal level across the board. And they've got a, notwithstanding that we just confirmed Ketanji Brown Jackson, they have very much a majority at the Supreme Court. And so we don't have the ability to really take these issues to the courts the way that we used to. So please get involved in that, find out about that, vote at every level, the local, state, and federal. It matters. Tell all of your friends, because a lot is really hanging right now. Generational shifts are happening in politics, and again, we're bracing for what's potentially to come after November, and it's not good at all. It's not good.
Well, let's give this panel a hand. What a way to start off our conference. Thanks, Professor Neal. Thanks, Derrick. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Nicole. We're going to take a break for about 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Come on back. We're going to have one more panel session, then we're going to break for lunch about 1:15. So come on back about 7 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That was great, man. Good conversation.